This time on Finnegan's Garage, it is Big Kid Legos as we build brand new turbo headers for my 1961 Cadillac Coupe DeVille. That's right, we are making more progress on the car you have been asking me to work on the most. Let's get after it. This is my 1961 Caddy. I love this car. Bought it out of an airplane hangar in Southern California. Actually, I think it was Central California. Probably, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago. You might have seen it on an episode of Roadkill where Freiberger put snow chains on it, drove it over a mountain, and the car was so reliable that we got bored. And we actually stopped driving this car in the middle of the episode, flew to Arizona, and drove a different car. That also turned out to be too reliable. Shipped it back to Georgia after that, drove it around for a bit, really liked it, except the car, although very original and very clean, did nothing well. The engine was gutless, the transmission slipped a little bit, the brakes were junk. It just kind of floated down the road like, you know, a slow-moving pillow. And when I looked at the car, I saw something entirely different in my head. I saw big tires and beadlock wheels and a twin-turbo big block under the hood, and a car that I could fit my family and friends in, go run 8s at the drag strip, and then just cruise to Vegas or Atlantic City or wherever. I saw air conditioning and big power and a big car that everybody could fit into. I don't know, maybe a year after I got home with this car, I took it to Mooresville, actually Kernersville, North Carolina, which at the time was home of MRC Fab, which was a company that was doing mandrel bent chassis and suspensions and all kinds of cool stuff. They did the work on my C10. That company is no longer in business, I guess. It's been sold a couple of times, actually. And before they shut it all down, Jimmy Bullard and everybody that worked there helped me cut the entire floor out of this original 46,000 mile Cadillac Coupe DeVille and put a mandrel bent chassis under it so that we could lower the body down as low as possible. It does not have an adjustable suspension. It rides on coilovers front and back, but it has a triangulated 4-link. It has a quick performance 9-inch rear end. It has Weld Alpha beadlock wheels in the back and front runners. And right now we are midway through twin turboing this car. Tom Nelson at Nelson Racing Engines is building a 540 Big Block Chevy for it. I have a mock-up engine in the car that I've been using to build the turbo system and, you know, front roll cage, just trying to figure out the packaging of all this stuff without actually having my real motor. And we are now to the point where I can take cool parts like this and build the hot side of my turbo system, which is really exciting. So a couple episodes ago, you saw me finally mount both turbos in the car, and now it is time to start building turbo headers. It's like Legos for adults. Like, possibilities are endless for how much fun you can have with these and what you can make with them. Let's get going. All right, ladies and gentlemen, turbos are mounted, and we have now positioned the exhaust housings with plenty of clearance to the tire, which means the tires can now come off and they'll be out of the way while we fab the headers. Side of our turbo build begins here at the exhaust port of our Mass Motorsports cylinder heads. These are 1/2-inch thick flanges from Stainless Headers Manufacturing. We use these guys' products all the time because they have nearly everything you need to build headers or exhaust system, turbo system. They even carry wastegates and things like that. So check them out, whether you need just tabs or bends or flanges, whatever, they've got it. So we're gonna start there. We're gonna end here. This is the backside of our NRE turbo. We are using a Shearer Fabrications T6 to 3-inch round hole conversion flange. This takes the rectangular shape of the turbo exhaust inlet and converts it to a round hole that is easy to put tubing to. Just like that. Now, here's where things get tricky, right? This is a garden variety collector for a header. And it's a really, really nice one from Stainless Headers. However, it's kind of long. Even if you chop off the straight part at the end, it's going to be difficult to get from there to there. And I was thinking about this. I was like, man, how can I do this easier. And my friend Ryan pointed me in the direction of Elmer Racing. This is a Finnish company that makes billet stainless steel collectors. And this is a merge style collector. And as you can see, I'll just put them on the ground here. It saves a ton of space. Now, 9 times out of 10, this one here will work perfectly fine. It's lightweight, it's beautifully welded. But because of where I put my turbos, I don't have a lot of space. And so this one here is gonna make packaging the primary tubes and the exhaust inlet going into the turbo much easier. So we'll start with this. We need to get primary tubes into here, out of here, up into here. This would be a pretty sweet way to do it because it would make routing everything pretty easy. Just a 90 out and zigzag these into there. But then you've got this crazy 180-degree bend to get into here. So what I'm thinking about doing is probably something more like this. Pie cutting some straight tubing to get this bend, because this is a really tight bend right here. And then these will be a jigsaw puzzle of making S shapes. Won't be a disaster, but won't be totally easy to do either. And so this goes to here, wastegate gets ported out this way, and then our exhaust comes this way. Simple, basic, compact. Everything will be so short that there won't be any room for a flex joint or anything like that. But because everything is so short, hopefully it doesn't all grow that much and we mitigate the potential for this thing to crack. I don't know, eventually it will, but hopefully not for a while. Before I go pie cutting straight tubing and making a whole lot of work to get my 90-degree bend, let me just cut this 90 as short as possible and see where that puts us and if we can make it work. I don't think it's going to work, but we're going to try it either way. Pretty compact. Might work. The closer you get to the middle of the bend, though, the less round the tube is and the bigger it gets. So this probably won't fit into either one of those sockets, but we can massage it, see how it's more of an oval shape here. Once it makes the complete turn and you're back to the straight part, that'll be a round tubing. But even with mandrel bent tubing, as the die slides through it, the tubing expands as you're bending it. So there's not much you can do about that. Except if you decide this is the piece you want, you can go back in and massage this round again. I can show you how to do that if we use this piece. So then, what you're looking at, see how that goes over it, not in it. Not the end of the world, but that's what I'm talking about. Then this itty bitty short collector would go there. Did I grab the right size tubing? That's right. Uh-oh.
Cut the wrong 90?
Yeah, I think I just chopped up the wrong tubing. I think that's 3.5, not 3-inch. Okay, there's 3-inch. Okay, all right. That's not gonna work.
I mean, it'll work, it just takes a lot of weld to fill it.
Yeah, it'll work on the other car, not this one. Let me go find the actual right tubing. Measure twice. Cut 4 times.
Or don't measure and cut a bunch of parts?
Yeah, don't measure, just cut. See, and this 90 is on a different radius. So even though it's smaller diameter, it's longer. And when you don't have the right radius that you need, like this is probably a 6-inch radius or something like that. You know, that's not a very tight bend. This is the reason people started pie cutting stuff, because you can take this straight piece of tubing and cut it on 9-degree angles, and when you add up, is it 5 pieces? 9 and 9 is 18 times 5. When you add up the pieces, you can make a 90, and it's a really tight 90, and the benefit of cutting a round piece of tubing is when you weld it all together, it maintains the diameter throughout the bend. It's just way time consuming, because then you're gonna make 40 yards of weld to make this, basically.
Right.
But it's gonna be smaller than this. But let's see if we can make this work, because that saves time. Ah, there we go. Look at that. Look at that. Much better. Yeah, so if we were to do something like this, that's about where the collector would end up at.
The 90 looks too long.
Yeah. We could shorten it some, but not much. Because the more we shorten it again, then the less it fits. I'll cut a little more off of this just in case I can make it work.
Ooh, still fits kind of.
Still fits okay. That's not too bad.
A little shorter.
Yeah. That's not bad at all. I'm going to go through all the trouble of building this and then welding a wastegate mount onto it, and I bet you there's already a 90 out there with a wastegate mount built into it.
Probably. You know who would know? StainlessHeaders.com.
Yeah, I wonder if they make that. Yeah, I like this. This fits good.
Yeah, that's not too bad. The 2 rear cylinders you can take to the bottom, take 2 fronts to the top, and it'll work out pretty good.
I have a tech tip for you guys at home. Your wife's toilet brush, girlfriend, or the things she uses to clean the dishes, they're great for cleaning out the inside of tube. You just do a little something on there. This is acetone. You can use a non-chlorinated brake cleaner, whatever you want. It just goes right in there. And when you're done, you just put it back quietly. Because I say it's still effective at removing either poop or a beef stew, depending on where this came from, what area of the house. I feel like it still works.
Just don't mix them.
No, don't mix them up. See, look at that. Got all the oil out of there. And anytime you buy Mandrel bends, there's going to be oil in them. Mark my words, because it has to be in there for them to bend it. And then we're just going to wipe the outside. Yeah, just something like that. A little something. Now we can mark it with our Sharpie and then tack it together. I can't see anything. Like I can't tell, can this one even get there? I have no idea. So
You want to go, like here, would have to come off and it's going to be tight.
So go ahead and mark this.
What if you go back a little more? No, towards the firewall. That's an easy shot for both of these. This would do a little bit of an offset. This one almost straight in.
All right, go ahead and mark this real quick. Okay, that's good. So yeah,
Right here. Yeah. I think that's where I had you before. That's pretty easy.
Yeah, those 2 are easy. The other 2 will be a little more difficult, but
not too bad. Especially since they're coming up anyways.
Okay, everybody. Now that we know pretty much where our collector is going to go, let's talk about primary tubing. This is all 308 stainless from Stainless Headers. And what I'm illustrating here are the difference in centerline radiuses. This is 3-inch centerline radius, 4-inch, so you can see it's a much larger radius. And then this one, I haven't even measured yet, but it's a monster. This looks like, Jesus, 9? I don't know. But the reason you want to know about the different radiuses is it allows you to tuck tubes in tight next to each other. So for instance, that tube will tuck in tight next to this tube, and then these 2 obviously will fit right inside of this one. And so if you have the ability to, if you have the budget to, don't always just buy a bunch of tubing in one radius. If you can buy it in multiple radii, I don't know, whatever. It'll help you not only build the headers, but make them look cooler too. So that other one is basically an S, and that one's an S. So basically that would go to there, this would go to here, these 2 would turn this way and dive in here. Except for this one needs to make a hard right and get out of the way.
Or go up.
Let's go tack this together.
Okay.
Stole my wife's office chair.
How is it?
What could be more comfortable?
You look a little short there, Mike.
It's adjustable. What could be more comfortable than a leather friggin' office chair to weld in?
Is it leather or pleather?
It's probably pleather. I got it for Christmas a few years ago. It's probably pleather. It only goes down, dude. Wait. No way. It's too, I'm still using it. I brought it all the way down here. I don't care if I have to weld like this. I'm still using it.
There's a reason she gave it back to you.
Yeah. She's like.
To make it go away, Mike.
She is smarter than me. I won't argue that fact. It's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. Okay, we got Sharpie marks on here. We do. This is going to have to be a two-man job here, Joe.
I'm holding with my eyes.
Here we go. Here's that one. Let's spin it around and I'll put a tack on the opposite side. Yep, let's go bolt it up. I almost think shortening it a hair would make our lives easier. Getting a collector away from the head, you know? Will make it easier to make that turn to get in there. That will move that way. Yeah, let's do that. Let's go, where's the...
Showing the collector on this side?
Yeah, let's cut an inch off of this side. Yeah, let's take 1 inch off of that at the same angle that it's at.
Gonna make our whole funky butt.
It's all right, we'll beat it into submission. All right, take 3/4 of an inch. You talked me into it, Joe.
Well, I was gonna reuse that.
I'll buy you some more.
It's the holidays and all, I'm trying to save some money.
I anticipated it, and so I pulled my thumb out at the last second. Just say that was all perfect. So then we have a little bit of overhang here. So all we'll do is we'll mark the overhang is from here to here. Okay. And then what we'll do is we'll take a ball bearing on a shaft, put it right in here, and knock it and flare it out. And it won't be perfect, but it'll be better than what we have now. That's what I meant to say.
All right.
So what we need
Would you like a Bluetooth hammer?
What we need to do, no. The little ball peen one. And then what we'll do is we'll set this on a dragon blanket so that hopefully it doesn't get smashed in. Let's check it again. That's getting better. So basically by my 2 marks, we're pretty good now. Now it's past the marks so that it's not. Yeah, the area right here and right here is now good. Now it's just this area. We have a pretty good idea of where we're headed with this deal. Again, this is our flange that's going to convert the turbo inlet from a T6 to a round pipe. This is 3-inch stainless round pipe going to this Elmer Racing billet collector. Now, we're not going to weld everything all at once, and there's a couple reasons for that. What our plan is, because we know where our turbo is going to be, and we now know this is going to go here, we're going to have to come up with a plan for the 4th mounting bolt. Right now, this shear flange is studded, but if you look close in there, getting a nut on there and then getting a wrench to tighten it is going to be next to impossible. So probably what we're going to do is put a hex bolt going down that way and then put the nut here. But for the time being, this is all tacked together and we're not going to final weld these 2 joints here because as we weld all of this, because it's stainless, it's going to move around quite a bit. And one of the issues we're going to run into is as we go to build this collector, because it's so small, we're going to be able to weld 360 degrees around the first tube, the second tube, the third tube. By the time we get 3 of them in there and we go to put the 4th one in, we might not be able to get in here to weld that. So what we have to do is make sure these tubes are bottomed out on the receiver in there so that they seal really well. And then ideally, when they go into the head, this piece of tubing is close to the backside edge of the flange there. That way we can weld the inside pretty easily. And we should be able to fuse those 2 pieces together with none or minimal filler rod. But as you can see, when I turn this up in here, the only way to get it in is to shove it in there, which pulls it off of the receiver flange in there. We don't want that. So what that means is we're going to have to design tubes that go in there that stay bottomed out while also being long enough to come up in here so we can weld them. So this means that each one of these, we're gonna have to unbolt the header every time. So right now it's tight, bolted to the head. This is pretty tight here. This tube is too short. Like, because I can just throw it up in there, it's too short. It needs to be longer so that it extends further in there so we have a solid area to weld to. So that means we need to make another one of these. This was just our mock-up piece that bottoms out here and then fits up in there. But now that we know this is in general what this piece needs to look like, we can extend it. The next piece will be longer. We won't be able to install it. We'll have to remove the header, put the primary tube in there, then put this back on and make sure it bottoms out here while still going far enough in here to weld. So it'll be a process. We're gonna be taking all of this on and off. Now, you could cheat and you could cut these into individual flanges so that every primary tube you're building, you could just pop on and off. But then you lose some of the integrity of this thing, and it's more likely to warp when you weld it or warp when it's in service. So we're not gonna do that. We're gonna do this the hard way. We're gonna be removing this every time we build and install a tube, and we're gonna go 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, the other thing you're gonna notice about this is there's no flex joint in here. Now that's, part of the limitations of this package. There's no room for a flex joint in here. Now, all this is gonna expand and contract when it gets hot. However, the engine, the mid plate, the turbo, it's all gonna be rigidly mounted to the chassis. So it's gonna minimize the chance of it cracking. Over time, it's gonna happen. We're gonna have to repair it, but that's just kind of the nature of this beast. Now, I said it's solid mounted, but if you look down here at the motor mounts I made earlier, those are polyurethane bushings right there. This obviously is not solid mounted, so we're gonna have to machine these, put some aluminum bushings in there, then this will be solid mounted to the chassis, and the mid plate will be solid mounted to the chassis once we make the tabs there. We could have done a motor plate, except all the accessories are already on the front end of this block. They're from Billet Specialties. They're all on there. They all seemingly are going to work. I don't want to screw that up and screw up the spacing by then putting a motor plate up front when we have lots of room down here for our existing motor mounts. So that's our plan. Next thing we're gonna do is this primary tube here, we're gonna make it longer. Then we're gonna pop this off, put the new primary tube in there, pop this back on and see, will it stay bottomed out here? And does it give us enough engagement here to weld? So now, because this is longer, this should not go in. All right, see how when I go to rotate it up, it hits the flange? That's good. That means we added the length we needed. So what we need to do is take the collector part off, bottom it out in there, twist this, then install it in there, and it should go in. See, it's close, but it is not there. Oh, hold on. I think we might need a whoop-de-doo at the end of this. I don't think we're gonna be able to make it in one piece. Well, see, if you wanted to be cheesy, you could cheat and shorten it. Probably the easiest way to do this, while making sure that it's gonna be correct and it's got them bottom out, is to make it in 2 parts and then to weld the 2 parts together. We're not gonna get it out of one piece cut out of that J-bend. Yeah, I think what we'll do is cut this right here and then just turn it and then make another piece that matches it.
Okay.
I'm gonna sand this a little bit, make it more round, make it more flat. That's better. That's better. It's got to have a little.
Looks like an inch on the bottom and maybe 3/4 on the top.
Well, it needs just a little jog to it. That's not bad though.
No, that looks good.
That looks pretty damn close right there. Let's do this. Let's tack these 2 pieces together. Make our lives a little easier.
Honey.
Bingo. So the reason we go through all the trouble of sanding these till they're flat is they'll fit together better, they'll be easier to weld, and the end result is a much stronger joint. It's got a little bit of a gap there, but not much. So now we're gonna clean these with acetone inside and out. We'll tack this together. Real quick, I wanna talk to you guys about a new tool I got. This is from the Fein tool company. They're the ones that make the really cool chop saw. They make mag drills. They also make this new vise that's magnetic. Move it all over the place and then lock it down anywhere. And it's
So rad.
dude, well, I can't put my foot down. I can't move it barely. It's badass. And it has a half mode too. So here, I can move it. Here, yeah, that's not easy. And then off.
Such a cool piece.
Dude, it's sick. And I'm gonna use that to hold this. It's got a jaw here that works for round stuff. And I'm gonna use it to hold this right here. Line that up right there. And then I can tack this with it just sitting there. So because we got the fit up of these two pieces pretty darn tight, I should be able to just fuse these together, because if it doesn't work out, I want to be able to break it apart, and I don't want to use filler rod in it. That just makes it harder to break apart later. Like if you use the filler rod and you use a really good tack, a strong one, you're gonna have to cut it apart in most instances. But if I just fuse it together, and I don't like the way everything's going together, my Legos, then I should just be able to drop this on the floor and it'll break in half. Okay, here's one. Oh no. I moved it too soon. Come on, baby. Come on. Whew, that's warm. Yes. No filler rod. I was able to just fuse it together because the fit up of our two parts is pretty good. This side I'll push down on while I'm tacking it, because the tack and the heat went to that side, it's pulling this side apart, so I'll just squeeze it together while I tack this side. There we go. Nice. And now, hey, you can see that one worked, but because it was still cooling when I grabbed it and moved it, it came apart, but that one totally worked. All right, so we have a tack there, we have a tack here. I'm feeling good about this being a piece we're gonna continue with, so I'll put one more on it. I like 3 tacks. All right, now let's go see. Let's see here. Where's my other piece? This is the part where we have to remove either the flange or the collector to get this to fit in there. Or we continue on with this piece and make a little pie slice to go in there.
It's so close right there. It's just a little piece.
Yeah, we could just mark this piece, cut it, slide it up in there.
More cutting.
So that is not perfect. It has a little bit of a wedge to it.
Perfect.
So this
and
may
it's a little fatter.
And yes, so this may be perfect, or close to perfect.
You're not all the way in the header flange, are you?
Yeah.
Looks way crooked.
And this thing is 1/8 of an inch bigger than it needs to be.
I want people to understand that channel locks have a multi-purpose. This is really more of a use for channel lock than window cranks, hose clamps, gear shifters. I mean, there's multiple uses for them.
It is a pretty good window crank though, but you gotta get the curved jaws, you know?
Right.
Because someday you may buy an actual window crank and you don't want this to ruin the little thing in your regulator, you know? Joe's right. They do a lot of things.
How are we looking?
Might have taken too much off.
Right, bro.
But more importantly, it's too high.
How did we get so far out of whack? That's, oh.
It's straighter, but then it's too high.
Yeah. So close. Very close. Got a little bit of gap on that backside. Are we close to Jenga?
We're very, very close. It's got a small gap on the bottom, real small. I think that's just a little bit of little tuning, little tweaking, and I think this is our first primary tube. And what we'll do is we'll fully weld this one together and not permanently attach it here or here.
Right.
And we'll do that for all these and wait till these are all completely done, then weld them to the flange, then weld them to the collector. Don't permanently do this at all because all this can move when we weld.
Right.
And then at the very end, if we have to tweak this section of pipe, once the collector settles where it's going to settle, if we have to rebuild this, we can, you know?
That's an easy one.
Yeah.
All right.
But this, well, let me get the flashlight out. I think that is going to work. Yep, this is going to work.
All right. Well,
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Enjoy California.
I will.
Let's see when you get back. Yeah. When you get back, this should all be done. This side, anyway. Well, this is our first primary tube. It's all tacked together. We fuse tacked it, which is good because stainless is a reactive metal. And anytime you don't purge all of the oxygen from the front side and the back side of the material, it will get what's called sugaring. And that's just the metal pulling contaminants out of the air into the puddle. And so we're going to weld it on DC using a fairly large cup. This is the FUPA 12 from Dogfab, Michael Furik's company. And this will flow probably about 30 cubic feet per hour of pure argon. On this side of the weld, on the back side of the weld, we're going to do the same thing. I have a hose going to another bottle of argon with a regulator. That's going to be set down at about 7 cubic feet per hour. And we're going to flow argon through the tube out the other side. This is a purge plug from Tacking Industries. And you can see it's got a screen in it and an outlet. And all this is going to do is it's going to evacuate all of the air, the oxygen, from inside the tube so that the weld on this side will look the same as the weld on the back side without all the sugaring. And the sugaring, I know in a lot of applications, it's probably not a big deal, but in a turbo header, where this is the inlet side of the turbo, I don't want that stuff flaking off and going through the turbo. Just not cool. And so, you know, this is a more expensive way to weld stuff. We're gonna burn more argon than we normally would, but I believe it's a good idea and I'm gonna do it. So what I do is I start at about 10 CFH, and then once I feel like we've done a good job of getting most of the air out, I'll turn it down so it's less turbulent. And if we come over here, you can probably even hear it coming out. Oh yeah, I can hear it. So I'll wait, I don't know, about a minute, and then this will be ready to weld. I'm gonna be using my Miller Dynasty 400 AC/DC TIG machine. Fantastic machine. All kinds of features, all kinds of flexibility. Will weld anything I need to weld in the shop. And this pretty much stays in the corner of this room that I like to weld in at my weld table. And we're gonna weld it on about, we were tacking earlier at 47 amps, and I'm gonna turn this up to about 60 amps. This is 063 308 tubing, and I'll pulse it using my right foot, and it should go pretty well. It's crazy how much this stuff shrinks. Look at how short this tube is now. Oh, there we go. There we go. Just kidding. It's not that short. Oh man, this is working. And I think I can get all 4 of these bolts in, which is awesome. I do believe we are nailed our first tube. Yes! Earlier I said I didn't think we'd be able to get a nut on that stud, and I was right. We're not gonna be able to, but bolts work just fine. And I believe it is bottomed out in the collector, and it's welded end to end, back purged. I'm not gonna weld this or this just yet. I'm gonna do the other tubes first. But that's the beginning. Now I'll build this port, which is the number 5 cylinder, and this one will come right here. And even though it's really short, it probably won't be any easier than the one I just did. But the one I just did wasn't that big of a deal either. It's, you know, it's 4 pieces, but they were pretty basic pieces. Next. That went way easier than I thought it was gonna go. Cool. Number 7's done, number 5's done. We'll move on to number 3. Beautiful, beautiful. This is just flowing right along. Number 7, I wasn't totally stoked on how I welded it. I mean, it's not gonna fall apart or anything, but I was just getting used to the settings on my welder again, because it's been a while since I did it. Number 5 came out much better, much happier with that one. But again, it's not like it's gonna fall apart or anything. It just doesn't look as cool. 7 doesn't look as cool as 5. And hopefully 3 gets any even better, and 1 will just, oh man. Beautiful, beautiful. Here's where we're at. Obviously 7 is done, 5 is done. My original plan for number 3 was to have it come out, up, back, and turn into the rearmost upper port. The problem is the control arm mount and the rod end are so close that yes, I can pie cut it and get it through here, but it's always gonna be putting a bunch of heat into this joint and melt the Teflon out of it eventually. I think even with a heat shield, it might do it. So I think what I'm gonna do is send this one down under these other tubes, have it come up the back and turn into this rear port. And then number 1, because it's gonna come out in between the control arm mounts, this one can come out and up and back right here. So it's gonna change the look of the header a little bit, but I don't really care about that. The biggest thing is it's gonna work. Now this is a 4-inch center line radius, and so it's not as tight as the 3-inch, but as you can see, even the 4-inch clears that without even pie cutting it. You know, a straight piece of tubing, I could pie cut it and make a tighter radius than here, but this is a 4-inch. So if I cut a 3-inch bend, it'll be even tighter, and it'll easily clear that, and work. I have all these pieces of rubber, and these are great for spacing things. So what I'm gonna do is put this here, and that'll tell me whether I have enough space for, let's say, that bend right there. Let's move this. I apologize, everybody. Joe's on vacation. I'm doing this one-handed. That'll go right there. And then I've already tacked together a couple of pieces here. And so this one will come right out of that port. And I just have to get those things connected to each other. And as you can see, again, we have plenty of clearance for everything. Just need to join these two pieces together with a straight section. And then number one is done. And I'm not going to finish this because I still have to do number 3. I just got antsy and was like, let me see how number 1 looks. And I like the way it looks. So I'll just cut this piece real quick, tack it together, know that this one is going to work out, and move on to number 3. All right, let's talk about tube fitment and why sometimes tubes fit and sometimes they don't. This is a straight section. It was cut off of a J-bend like this. Now, when you start cutting tube sections in a bend like this, you have to know one thing. This diameter is not the same as this diameter. The moment a mandrel die comes through here, even though that's a really good way to bend tubing, it's not perfect. The tube stretches, it deforms, and so this diameter isn't the same as this, and here's your proof. This was cut out of one of those, and so was this. And when you put these two pieces together, you're gonna see that it overlaps all over the place. So like if I put this edge perfectly flush right there, when I flip it this way, you're gonna see that it's overhanging right there. And that's normal, and you can fix it. The other thing you're gonna notice is this was cut and it is no longer perfectly flat. And the way you tell that is, obviously you could put it on a countertop or something, but you can also put the two pieces of tube together and go, I have a gap. So I have an overhang and a gap. Those are two things I want to fix before I weld these together. And here's why. The better you fit these two pieces together, the easier it is to weld, and the better your weld will look and the stronger the joint will be ultimately. So the first thing you want to do is make this round again. And once you've made it round by squeezing it in various directions, then you want to go back and sand it on a flat surface to flatten the joint out so that when it mates to this piece, not only are the diameters close to exactly the same, so there's no overhang, but there's no gap in between the two pieces. What we want to do is squeeze this so that it becomes round again. And if you're curious about which direction you need to squeeze it, you can look straight down on it and see that it's flared out right here. You could also measure it if you wanted, but you can usually just eyeball this. So right now what I'm seeing is I need to squeeze both sides here, and then maybe a little bit here and a little bit here. So all I'm gonna do is put it in my vise. I'm gonna move it up the tube about 3/8 of an inch, and then I'm just gonna gently close the vise down, squeeze it just a little bit. We're not gonna go crazy. So you can see this is where I squeezed it. It closed that up and then it flared that just a little bit. So now what I'm gonna do is turn this thing about 30 to 40 degrees there, squeeze it again, and then I'm gonna turn it the opposite direction, squeeze it again, and then I'm gonna take a look at this. And I can see right here, there's a little bit of flare there. This looks pretty good from here to here, but right here, there's a little bit of flare. And I'm gonna test this by putting my straight section on there. And then I'm gonna start eyeballing. All right, no overhang from there to there. No overhang from there to there. I have a slight overhang right here. Now, you could roll this edge of this tube, the straight piece, to match the curved piece, or we could flare this part of the curved piece out. I'll show you how to do that real quick. We're just gonna loosely hold that right there, and then I'm gonna beat the snot out of this with a tool that I made. All this is some bar stock with a heavy duty ball bearing welded to it, and you could put it right there, smack it with a hammer, and this will flare the edge of the tube while keeping it somewhat round to the shape of the bearing. I have these in various sizes. The other end of this thing has a bigger bearing. We'll probably use that one. It's great if you have a friend to hold the tube or set the tube on a table, whatever you got to do. You don't want to over clamp this thing really tight because then you're gonna deform other places of the tube. But right now, it's not in there well enough where I can hit this too hard. We'll hit it and see what happens, but odds are I'm gonna probably have to do this on the table. Whoops, and I just hit that and dented that, so now I need to dent that back the other way. Let's test fit again. When you're working with a straight piece, you can look right down through the tubing and you can see where you have overhang and where you have parts that are under. Or you can hold it up here and you can just feel it. Oh, we're getting there. We're getting there. We have less overhang than we had before. That's good news. Whoops. And then I just went and hit that. A small ball peen helps too. You can hit the ball peen into it. I see I bent that just a little bit. But out here, our overlap is getting much better. So we'll continue working this, and then we'll tack these two pieces together. Now, we don't have to worry about the orientation of these two pieces because we're putting a straight piece on there. But all we want to do is make sure we don't have any big overlaps. This piece is not perfect. It's going to overlap just a little bit. But what we're going to do is split the difference between the two sides. These two sides don't overlap at all. This two sides, right here and here, these do overlap. So what we want to do is just split the difference. We use the vise to hold this piece level, so this tube just wants to sit on top of it. And then because I don't have anyone else here, I'm gonna stick this chunk of a metal on top, and that heavy chunk of metal will keep this from lifting on one side. So let's just say if I tack this side, the heat is going on to draw these two pieces together, and it's gonna wanna lift this side up. Now, if you have a friend present, they can hold it down for you. Or like I said, you can just put a heavier piece of metal on top there. And that should keep this from lifting too far. Now, because we went the extra mile to make these two pieces fit together really well, meaning no gap in there, we should be able to just fuse tack this, which means no filler rod, just hold the torch there. And this metal is about 0.65 thick, I think. We can double check it and measure it, but I think it's somewhere in that area. We're only gonna tack this with about 45 amps of power. And the key to fusing these without blowing a hole in it is to get the tungsten as close as you can to the metal without touching it. The closer you get, the more focused you're gonna put the amperage into the joint. And so as long as you get really close without touching, you can pretty much roll into the pedal, go wide open, and it should stick the two sides together without blowing a hole in it. If you blow a hole in it, that means your tungsten was too far away or your tube fit was no bueno. Now the reason we're not gonna put any filler rod in this is we're in the mock-up phase. If we have to take this back apart, it's a lot easier if it's just fused together than it is if I stick filler rod in it. This looks like it fits pretty good. Let's weld without filler rod. And when you're tacking, you want to be steady. So if you need to use two hands, go for it. I do, because I don't have the steadiest hands in the world. So before I go, what I do is I'll touch the tungsten to it, make sure I'm in the right spot, back off just a little bit, like as little as possible. I'm talking not even 1/8 of an inch. I'm going to back up just a hair, like a 1/16 of an inch. And then I'm gonna slowly roll the pedal on, get some argon flowing. And then I'm gonna roll into it and go wide open. And boom. Without hardly any effort at all and no filler rod, those are fused together. And thanks to our weight, this side did not pull up, which means I can come right over here, go 180 degrees away from my first tack and put our second tack. I'll normally do 2 tacks, 3 if it really needs to hold something well together. But because we're still mocking up, we're just gonna do 2 here. And let it rip. Oh, see, and that didn't work because there's a little bit of overhang. Let me show you guys this. There's a little bit of overhang, and because of the overhang, and because this lifted just a hair, it started to open up the gap. I didn't blow a big hole in it, but it started to open up the gap. So I need to push down on this and choose a different spot to tack it. Or I need to put filler rod in there, but I don't want to do that. So let's go to a different spot. There we go, boom. Now that second time, we did not open up a gap. We did not put a hole in it. So let me undo this and show you what I'm talking about. All right, so there's your first fusion tack. Looks great. And the fit is good. There's really no gap. There's a little bit of an overhang, right? So if you look right here, it started, not necessarily to blow a hole, but it started to eat away at the metal as I was rolling onto the pedal, because I wasn't pushing down on this and the metal wasn't enough weight to keep the two tubes together. So this second tack was me pushing down on the metal, pushing the two tubes together, and even though there was an overlap, I was able to fuse it together with no filler rod. This is gonna be an easy weld to make once we're satisfied we have a complete tube that's all tacked together and it's ready to be back purged and welded. All right, let's go back over to the car. Okay, I wanna make sure it's butted into the collector. And then, can we make these two pieces go together? And this does not fit exactly right, and it's because this tube is just a hair longer than it needs to be. Like, you could force these together, but you don't want to. We need to just start shaving this gap right here. This tube right here needs to get shortened until these things fit together. So all I'm gonna do right now is take just one blade width off of here. Now the danger here is that if the saw grabs the tube, it may break these tacks. There's only two of them, they're just fusion tacks, they're not real strong. If I was to throw this on the ground, this would probably break off. So there's a chance that right now, what I'm about to do is gonna wreck this tube, but we'll try not to. We'll see what's happening. Here's our cut. We need to go clean it up and then test fit it. See a little gap right there? That's because it's not flat. Needs a little more sanding on the belt sander. And then this would be flat. However, let's not go any further because this other tube might be coming in at a slight angle. This might not even want to be flat. Let's go find out. Needs a little tweaking. Boom. Okay. I believe we are there. And now we can weld this one. Might have to unbolt the flange finally, because this does not want to go. Or get this one in first and then put the other ones in. Okay. There we go. There we go. Yes, yes, yes. There we go. There we go. We are in. Got about a 1/4 inch of clearance to the control arm mount. We've got more than that to the rod end. And can always lift that up a little bit more when we weld it. But she is in. 157, done. Now we got to do number 3, which, as I said before, is going to go down and come back up from back here. Let's start cutting some tubes. All I got to do is weld those two pieces right there. And then, once that's done, I can disassemble the header, take 3 of the primary tubes out, and just weld one all the way around. And then move to the next one, the next one. And that last one, I won't be able to weld 360 degrees around because there won't be any room to get in there to weld it, right in the center joint. But we'll make sure that one is fully bottomed out on the step inside of that billet collector. And as long as it is, it'll seal up well. Once they're in the collector, we'll put this back in and start tacking them to the flange. Once they're all tacked to the flange, the whole header comes out and then gets welded and back purged on the bench. People, it is time to weld our primary tubes to our collector and to our flange. And boy, did I get a cool new tool from the guys at Stainless Headers Manufacturing. This, I believe, is about to be patented by them, and it is a combination heat sink slash fixture for bolting your flange to, right? So you bolt this tier. This is 1 inch thick aluminum, I think. It's about 1 inch thick. You bolt this down, and it has several bolt patterns. This one's for a Big Block Chevy, but it works for both 484 bore space, which is your garden variety 454 Mark IV, Mark V, Mark VI style block. But it also has 5 inch bore space pattern and 5.3. So if you're building really big motors, mountain motors type stuff, something with a 5 inch bore space, Brodix aluminum block for Sonny's heads, Gene Fulton, like all this stuff. There's a pattern here. What this does is you bolt the flange down. Now this will resist warping as you're welding each primary tube to it. But more importantly, there's ports here that are drilled through and that come out. And they have these little diffusers in here so that you can flow argon into the tubes as you're welding them. No sugaring when you do this. And again, more importantly, this flange should stay flat as the aluminum draws the heat out of the stainless. It's bolted properly. It shouldn't warp. That is cool. But for the longest time, I was just using a giant piece of C-channel that I had drilled the bolt pattern into. Where did that thing go? I had it out because I was about to use it. I don't know where it is. I'll find it. But I had a big, thick, 1/4 inch thick, 4.5 inch wide piece of C-channel that I would bolt these flanges to. And it worked. It was fine. But it only had one bolt pattern in it. And it wasn't nearly as cool as this. And I was using like aluminum tin foil and a hose and, all these different things that I had to move around to back purge these when I welded them. And this, it has quick release fittings. Like, dude, I can't wait to try this. It's gonna be awesome. Time to pull the header off the motor. All the primary tubes are built, and I tacked 3, 5, and 7 to the flange and to the collector. I left number 1 out so that I could get in there and weld. And this might burn me. I don't know that I can actually get number 1 back in. Now that the collector is permanently attached, I may have to cut number 1, put it in, and then weld it back together. But at least with number 1 out, I can get in there better to make sure these get welded. Time to pull it out of the car. Weld it on the bench. All right, here's what I was talking about earlier. This is what I was using to keep my header flanges from warping. And that is 3/16 thick. I thought it was 1/4, but it's 3/16 here. It's 1/4 in the corners. Basically, I plasma cut some holes so I could access the tubes. Put my bolt pattern in there. This is a Big Block Chevy pattern. I think the last time I used this was actually on the Sonny Leonard Hemi motor. This works, It does minimize warpage. It's not perfect. The heat has affected the web in between because this is pretty thin material. This should not suffer that same fate because this is 1 inch thick, and Stainless Headers Manufacturing has all kinds of options for this, different bolt patterns for you. You can get it. They have a carrying case for the thing. I'll put a link in the description of the video. It's already on their website. And it comes with header bolts that are quality ARP stainless stuff. Comes with nickel NECs. It comes with Teflon tape for the quick connect fittings. Basically everything you need to bolt your header on and get to welding, while flowing argon and back purging the thing. Especially like these. They're basically mufflers. It kind of diffuses the argon as it comes up into the tube, so it's not this big turbulent mess in there. That's pretty slick. Let's do it. There she is. This came out good. Tube fitment is nice. We'll be able to just fuse that right together there. This one here, same thing. This one here, we'll massage it over with a little hammer action, get it closer right there. And the fit is good. I'm happy with this. This whole thing is gonna turn out nice. Step number one will be to get in here and weld these tubes right in here. Then put this one in there. And once that's in there, we'll bolt the flange to our purge plate and then weld all the primary tubes on the outside, flip it over, do the inside. Here's something I never had before, quick disconnects. Normally I would just use a nipple on a hose and that works just fine, but dude, this is nice. That is so nice. Yo, shout out to Tacking Industries for making purge plugs that do a great job of not melting. See a little bit of smoke there, right? Because it's hot, and that plug is still doing its job. It's got a screen built into it. I've got argon flowing out of that. Argon into the plate, collectors capped off, argon flowing out there, and then, you know, the few areas that are not welded, there's argon leaking there too, but you can hear it. I got these 3 tubes welded inside here. Got to flip to the other side, try to get into the rest of it. We're getting close. Flange is pretty much welded. We just got to do one last primary tube, and then the majority of this header is done. Pretty happy with this. I really like the plate. It makes it a lot easier to work with this thing. I think the only thing you could change to this plate to make it even more functional, and it probably wouldn't work because there's bolt patterns for different things in there, was that if this was open, you could flip the plate over and then weld the backside of this. But you can also do that just by unbolting the header. So I don't know what I'm saying. End to end, from this end to that end, this thing should maintain its shape, should stay pretty flat. Now, top to bottom, here to here, there might be a little warpage where it pulls up on the very edges because it's so thin. And it's pretty thick material, so I'm putting some heat into it. And granted, I'm not a professional, but it lifted just a little bit, and I'm guessing a professional who managed the heat a little better wouldn't have that happen. But I don't think that's enough to leak. And if it is, I can take this and surface the bottom of it and make it flat again. I think we're gonna be pretty good. Last tube, which I think I blew it, I already made it. And I don't think I can get it in there. I think I'm gonna have to cut it in half, put it in there, then weld it back together. I didn't really think that through, but on the bright side, most of this thing is done, and we did get the inside welded up. Making progress. Earlier in this video, I talked about reasons for back purging the inside of the weld, and I talked about how we're just basically removing the oxygen from the joint. And here's what it looks like, the backside of that weld, when you back purge it. See that? That looks like the front side of the weld. This is the inside of the tube, right? And I'll try to find a spot where maybe I tacked it. Okay, see that right there? Was tacked without any argon in there, and that is what's known as sugaring. And that will flake off. Now imagine, if you don't back purge this, that's what the backside of the entire weld looks like. Instead of over here, that nice part. Not the end of the world, like I said, we're not building airplanes here. We don't have to worry about this thing falling out of the sky. Okay, let's put this last tube in. I'm now employing the Fein Magnetic Vise, pieces of rubber floor mat, some aluminum chunks, all to hold the fixture and the header up so that I can get that last tube to sit where I need it to go. So I can tack it here, tack it there. Once it's tacked, I can take all this off, hook the purge line back up, and weld that tube all the way around. But until then, I don't have 3 hands, man. This is what it's gonna take. As you can see, our fitment is pretty good right here on number 7. Number 5 needs a little bit of work. And all we have to do here is just put a drift in there, smack it with a hammer, or a really small ball peen hammer, the rounded part. Just hit that right in there, butt it up against the side, and then we can fuse this together. And that one needs a little work there. But overall, Not too shabby. Do that, weld that, put it back at the fixture, and then finish welding that tube there, and then we can go put this back on the car and see if it still fits. This one I might have to weld some and then work it. You can do that. It's stainless, so it work hardens as it gets hot, but it doesn't quite want to stretch very well right now. Let's see, we'll keep hammering it. Bueno, much happier. Now we just need to do a little bit right here and we are done. Oh man, we're so close. I just ran out of argon. But pretty much it's there and I'm happy with it. Like, for a guy like me, amateur welder, this came out pretty good. And it's 90% there. Like, the elbow isn't finished because I need to go bolt this on the car and make sure it still fits. And if it does, then I can go back and fix this joint that had a little bit of gap, a little bit of overhang. Fix that joint so that it welds better and doesn't have a burn hole there. And yeah, I mean, dude, I'm stoked. This is one of the nicer headers I've ever built. And shout out to the guys at Stainless Headers Manufacturing for an awesome fixture, great tubing. I mean, dude, this stuff flows and welds so nice. Like, it's beautiful. And other than my little screw up there where I had to cut the tube and put it back together, I'm proud of this one. Let's go test fit it. I'm happy to report that I totally did not burn myself on the tube placement with regards to the bolts. I can definitely get them out. At least I can get out these smaller 6-point ARP bolts. A hex bolt, there's no way I'd ever get it in there and get it out. But these come out pretty good. So stoked on that. Funny thing about having this is it's not something I'm gonna use every day of my life because I don't build headers every day of my life. You know, this isn't a professional shop. And as soon as I posted on Instagram that I had this, I started getting texts from my friends that were like, hey, as soon as you're done, you know, flow it to me. And I'm like, hell yeah, this thing's incredible. It's just gonna be sitting here until the next time I build headers for something, so. There's definitely a small amount of warpage, very little, but I may go back and surface this so that it's perfectly flat. Or, you know, there's two schools of thought on that. A lot of people don't even run gaskets anymore. They just use high temp copper seal or orange stuff on the back of this. I've done it. That stuff's a pain in the butt. I'd much rather use a gasket and every now and again blow out a gasket and change it. It's a lot easier to deal with, I think. Probably surface these just a little bit to make sure they're bueno and then roll with gaskets. In fact, right now I'm gonna bolt it on the car with a gasket and see, does this line up anymore? Will it go in? That's the first thing. Can I actually get it around the suspension? Oh, yes I can. Okay, that's good news. Step one, it fit over the suspension and the frame rail. Step two is, once I put the gasket in, will it mate back up with the turbocharger? I got the front and the back bolts started. Nice thing about this gasket is the front and the back hole are notched, so we can just drop it in. Okay, boom. Okay, this looks like it's in the ballpark of where it used to be. Might have twisted a little bit, but I don't know. We also don't have all the bolts tight, so let's tighten them up and see. No way. No way. Dude, this is working. This is absolutely working. I got all four of the bolts started, and this looks like that's gonna clamp up. Let me tighten the rest of the header flange bolts. Oh my goodness. This is working. It's totally working. my God. It worked. It totally worked. You have no idea how happy I am about this. Welds don't suck. Everything fits. Everything clears. I can access all the bolts. I can get to the spark plugs. Oh my gosh, this is so cool. Now I can weld this last joint. I have built headers before where when I got all the way to the end of the header, the tip wasn't where it started out at, like it moved. These things expand and shrink and move, and they do all kinds of weird things, especially when the fit between the tubes is not great. Like if you leave big gaps and you go to weld them together, it pulls the material together, and next thing you know, that primary tube you just made is 3/8 of an inch too short. But dude, I went the extra mile on this header to not have any big gaps, to not have any gaps really. And the end result was a header that bolted right in and bolted right back up to the turbo. Oh, this is so cool. Do you know what this means? This means that the next time I work on this car, I can do cool stuff like put the wastegate on, figure out the exhaust where it's gonna dump. I can start building the cold side, blow-off valve, stuff like that, like really fun stuff. We are over the hump on this side of the car. Wow. Oh my God, it's so exciting. All right, I wanna go dump all this footage on my laptop, get it edited and get it up for you guys. And then, dude, stick with me. We'll do some more work to this car. Fired up. This is awesome. You guys have a great day, all right? Thanks for watching Finnegan's Garage. Yes! Oh man, so cool. God, this came out good. I'm so excited about this thing.